The following video is a segment from a much longer video. If you want to go directly to the main video and watch it in full, then you can find the link to that in the description, plus right up here in the card. Enjoy. The I am statements. In John's Gospel, we can read some quotes from Jesus in which Jesus says, I am this, or I am that. Like back in John 6, we learned that Jesus said, I am the bread. In other places in John's Gospel, we can see Jesus said, I am the light. I am the door, I am the good shepherd, I am the way and the truth and the life, I am the resurrection and the life, and I am the vine. Now, Side B tends to bring up the I am statements a lot in this debate.
Let's look at it this way. Is there any one of the other 7 I ams that we take literally? Jesus said, I am the door. Oak, pine, what kind? Do we take that literal? But I am the true vine. Strawberry vine, grapevine. Have we taken that literal, right? What are some of the other ones there? I am the light of the world. He is the sun.
And we're back. YouTube channel showed up today. It's like, you know, how YouTube throws those things up on the right side of the screen. This channel is called How to Be Christian. And it ought to be called The Devil Teaches How to Be Christian. Because it is a deceptive channel. The person that does it makes claims to be a Bible-believing Christian, and he is not. Unless you mean in a Roman Catholic sense. Now, all you got to do, guys, is open your Bible and find out what God really says. This channel is thinking biblically, and we're about the Word of God. This is the bread that came down from heaven that one may eat of and not die. He was probably gesturing to himself at that point because he said, I am the bread of life. I am the living bread that has come down from heaven. He's not talking about the wafer and the wine. It's just like Jesus saying, I am the door. Well, he doesn't have 2 hinges and a knob, or 3 hinges and a knob.
Eating the bread of life, which is Jesus's flesh, I think is an obvious metaphor. Now, let's look at John 8, verse 12. He says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Is Jesus literally identifying himself as like a light? Like he emits photons, and, you know, if he's in a dark room, then you see everything because of it. No, he's not identifying himself literally as a light. This is obviously a metaphor. And we don't need to, get into like what it means and all of that, because that's sort of getting on a tangent. So what's another example? He says, I am the door. Is Jesus literally a door? Is he calling himself an actual door? Does Jesus have hinges, as people often ask? No, Jesus is not literally identifying himself as a door. He's like a door. This is a metaphor, obviously. I am the good shepherd. Was Jesus literally identifying himself as an actual shepherd? No, he's not, because we're not actually sheep, first of all. Second of all, Jesus, before he began his public ministry, was not a shepherd. He was a carpenter, like his earthly father. I am the true vine. Is Jesus literally a vine? No, obviously. He's not actually a vine. This is also a metaphor. So these are all metaphors. Jesus has a bunch, at least 4 I am statements in John's gospel that are clearly metaphors. And in fact, let me just go back to John 10 for a second. He says, in verse 6 here, it literally says it explicitly. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, it's a figure of speech. So John 10 is even explicit about it.
So as you can see there, Side B is great at quoting these I am statements. They said this one, and this one, and this one, and this one.
Jesus said, I am the door.
I am the door.
I am the door.
I am the good shepherd.
I am the true vine.
I am the true vine.
Side B does an amazing job at quoting the I am statements. What they're not so great at, though, is, talking about the rest of the conversation. Like, you see I am the door here? That's not even the beginning of the conversation. This beginning part of the conversation is very important to understanding why Jesus might say, I am the door.
We don't need to, get into like what it means and all of that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Side B rarely gets into what the I am statements mean and all that. So let's do what these guys from Side B aren't doing and actually read the full passage from the Bible. In John chapter 10, we're told that Jesus said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." Now this stuff that Jesus was saying about the door and the sheep, I'm pretty sure that was just a figure of speech. Because the next line says, "This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them." So here is the beginning part of the conversation that none of these guys on Side B mentioned. Jesus started off by talking about a door. He was being figurative here. This was a figure of speech. The author of John's Gospel tells us that. So Jesus was making a figure of speech about a door. He said, "He who enters by the door," but we're told that the people did not understand what he was saying to them. So Jesus again said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture." So these guys all quote, "I am the door," and they act like "I am the door" is the main thing that Jesus said. Like he walked in front of a crowd and said, "Hey, I am the door. Figure that out." But really, "I am the door" explains the figure of speech that Jesus used, and they didn't understand. So yeah, "I am the door" looks a bit different when you read the passage like this, instead of like this. Or actually, in the case of James, he read the passage like this. James read part of verse 9, and then he read part of verse 6.
John 10, verse 9. He says, "I am the door." He's like a door. This is a metaphor, obviously. In verse 6 here, it literally says it explicitly. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, it's a figure of speech. So John 10 is even explicit about it.
So yeah, James here is saying that "I am the door" is a figure of speech, and he's saying that John 10 is explicit about it. But this part right here where John 10 is being explicit about a figure of speech, that belongs up here, before "I am the door," and after the initial door metaphor. This right here is what John 10 explicitly calls a figure of speech. "I am the door" is never called a figure of speech. That being said, Side A has no problem with "I am the door" being a figure of speech. In fact, Side A has no problem with "I am the bread" being a figure of speech. Not everyone on Side B seems to realize this, though.
Let's look at it this way. Is there any one of the other 7 I ams that we take literally? I don't know why it seems to be that this is the one we take literal.
So what is Evan saying here? He thinks that of the 7 I am statements, Side A is treating one of them differently. So let's look at the 7 in question. When it comes to "I am the bread," Evan and certain other people on Side B think that Side A takes that literally. And when it comes to these 6 other I am statements, Evan and certain other people on Side B think that Side A takes all of those figuratively. Over on Twitter, someone shared this post with us. It's from an account called Indiana Bruner. Indiana writes, "Jesus, I am the light. Rome, silence. Jesus, I am the door. Rome, silence. Jesus, I am the good shepherd. Rome, silence. Jesus, I am the vine. Rome, silence. Jesus, I am the bread. Rome, take this literally, or you'll go to this place we made up called purgatory." I think I accurately captured the emotion there, but Indiana, you can let me know. As for these arguments that Evan and Indiana are making, though, they show a great lack of education. These are arguments from people who have no idea what they're talking about. Nobody on Side A is saying that "I am the bread" has to be taken literally. For the 7 I am statements in question, if you're on Side A, you don't have to take a stand as to whether or not they're literal or figurative. So for the rest of part 2, let's just assume that all 7 of these I am statements were meant figuratively and not at all literally. Because something could be meant figuratively and literally at the same time. For instance, here we have the statement of "Scott waved the white flag." That could be meant figuratively, as in Scott surrendered. And at the same time, it could be meant literally, as in Scott physically waved an actual white flag. So yeah, we're not just going to assume they were meant figuratively, but also not at all literally. Now let's make a table here to keep track of things. So Jesus used a certain term with people. In this case, that term was a door. And Jesus made a statement which utilized that term. He said, "He who enters by the door." As we know from the Bible, this was a figure of speech, and the people did not understand what Jesus was saying. However, Jesus does help to explain what he meant by saying, "I am the door. Let's keep reading. Jesus goes on to say, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. All right, so again, we've got Jesus talking about something here. He's talking about a good shepherd. And Jesus made a statement about this good shepherd. He said, the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Now, who's this good shepherd? Well, Jesus gave us a statement that answers that question. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. Time to read some more. Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean, because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you, unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments, and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends, if you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you, that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. So we had the door, the good shepherd, and now we got a few more things here. We have a vine dresser, and branches. Jesus made a statement involving some of those things. This particular statement actually looks like a simile being a figure of speech comparing two unlike things that is often introduced by like or as. We can see in Jesus' statement here that he's using the word as. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Now with similes, it's usually very easy to figure out what are the two things being compared here. For instance, if someone says cheeks like roses, the two things being compared are cheeks and roses. In Jesus' simile here, clearly the branch is you, the person, and the vine is Jesus. So if you know how similes work, this is very easy to figure out, but also, Jesus explicitly said, I am the vine. My Father is the vine dresser. You are the branches. So we know all the elements of the figure of speech thanks to these statements that Jesus made. He's got an I am statement there, a my Father is statement, and a you are statement. So let's get to John 6 now. We read all of this in part 1. This is where Jesus is talking about a bread. So we can add that to the list of things Jesus talked about. Now let's get to some statements that Jesus made about that bread. He said, the bread of God is he who comes down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, the bread that I will give, and whoever feeds on this bread will live forever. Now, did Jesus drop any hints as to what this bread was? Oh, that's right. He said, I am the bread of life. I am the bread that came down from heaven. I am the bread of life. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. So Jesus is the bread. He said so multiple times. So let's take this table here and answer a few fill-in-the-blanks. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking these statements here, and then we're going to use the I am statements to figure out what these statements mean without using these words. So let's make our way to the door. Jesus said, he who enters by the door. So we got he who enters by the door. We're going to get rid of the door. And now we just have he who enters by blank. So what could we fill in that blank with? I mean, it used to be the door. That's what he used to say. And if we go here to the I am statements, Jesus said, I am the door. Oh, those are the two words that we just got out of here. So if Jesus is the door, then we should be able to fill in the blank here with Jesus. And now it says, he who enters by Jesus. Is that okay to do? Can we swap out the door for Jesus? Well, if we look at the full passage here, that's exactly what Jesus did. He started off by saying, he who enters by the door. This was a figure of speech. The people did not understand it. And Jesus went on to explain, I am the door. If anyone enters by me. So Jesus went from saying enters by the door to enters by me. So our fill in the blank answer here is exactly what Jesus taught. Let's try another one. Jesus said, the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So let's take the good shepherd out of here, and we're left with blank lays down his life for the sheep. Going back to the chart, we see Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. So since the blank used to be the good shepherd, we should be able to fill in that blank with Jesus. So now we have Jesus lays down his life for the sheep. And how about that? If you go to the passage, Jesus even says, I lay down my life for the sheep. So we filled in the blank correctly again. Let's go to the next one. Jesus said, the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine. So remember, we're trying to say this same exact thing without using any of these words. So let's throw away those branches and pull out that vine. And now we have blank cannot bear fruit by blank unless blank abides in blank. Ooh, 4 blanks. We're definitely stepping up our game here. So let's get back to the table. According to Jesus, the branches were people. Now 3 of these blanks, we're talking about a branch. So let's fill in those blanks, and now we can say a person cannot bear fruit by themselves unless that person abides in blank. Now that last blank, that used to say the vine. And according to the Bible, Jesus said, I am the vine. So I'm pretty sure that last blank is Jesus, which means a person cannot bear fruit by themselves unless that person abides in Jesus, which is again something that Jesus himself taught. He said, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Now let's get some bread. Jesus made a bunch of statements about the bread. The bread of God is he who comes down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, the bread that I will give, whoever feeds on this bread will live forever. Let's get rid of the bread. And now we have blank of God is he who comes down from heaven. If anyone eats of blank that I will give, and whoever feeds on blank will live forever. So you know the drill. These used to say the bread. So let's go back to the chart and hey look, Jesus said, I am the bread. So we can fill in all the blanks with Jesus, meaning that Jesus of God is he who comes down from heaven. And if anyone eats of Jesus, Jesus that I will give, and whoever feeds on Jesus will live forever. So let's go ahead and check our work again. Jesus talks about the Father who sent him, meaning God sent him, which means he's of God. Even Simon Peter says, Lord, we have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. So Jesus is of God, and he did say, I have come down from heaven. So we got that one right. Jesus said, whoever feeds on my flesh, whoever feeds on me. That all matches with if anyone eats of Jesus. Next up, Jesus that I will give. Jesus said, the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. So Jesus is saying that he will give his flesh. And just like my flesh is a part of me, Jesus' flesh is a part of him. So what Jesus will give is Jesus. In other words, Jesus that I will give. Now let's check out this last one here. Jesus said, whoever feeds on this bread, he will live forever. But we were getting rid of the bread. We had a blank there, so we filled it in with Jesus because he said, I am the bread. So it should be okay to say whoever feeds on Jesus will live forever. And how about that? Jesus said, whoever feeds on me, he also will live because of me. So that was fun. Now we have this table here that talks about things that Jesus talked about, statements that Jesus said involving those things, and then statements that Jesus made to help understand what these other statements are talking about. So let's add another row here to see how Jesus said these statements without using these words. So this row is basically the fill in the blanks that we just did. And now let's add one more row. The row for what happened next. And we'll start filling that in from the bread column. So this is the column where Jesus talked about eating bread. This is the column where Jesus said he is the bread. And this is the column where Jesus talked about feeding on him. So let's go ahead and ask the question. What happened next? Well, Jesus took bread, blessed it, and said, take, eat. This is my body. So yeah, that's what happened next in regards to bread. Let's look at these other columns. What happened next in regards to the door, or the good shepherd, or the vine? Well, I can tell you this, it's nothing like what happened with the bread. The Bible never records any event in which Jesus walked up to a door, blessed it, and said, enter by this. This is my body. Nor does the Bible record any event in which Jesus introduces the apostles to a good shepherd, blesses them, and says, "This guy's going to lay down his life for you. This is my body." And also the Bible never records any event in which Jesus grabbed a vine, blessed it, and said, "Abide in this. This is my body." The bread is the only one where Jesus takes the thing he's talking about, the bread, blesses it, and says, "Take, eat, this is my body." So yeah, now that we have all those facts right here in chart form, let's take a listen again to what side B is saying.
Let's look at it this way. Is there any one of the other 7 I ams that we take literally? Jesus said, "I am the door." Oak, pine, what kind? Do we take that literal? But I am the true vine. Strawberry vine, grapevine. Have we taken that literal? Right? What are some of the other ones there? I am the light of the world. He is the sun. And maybe that's how some people tend to worship everything. But these are picture words that he used. I don't know why it seems to be that this is the one we take literal.
So Evan is asking, is there any one of the other 7 I am statements that we take literally? And he's saying, I don't know why it seems to be that this is the one we take literally. So Evan thinks that of these 7 I am statements, side A is treating I am the bread differently from all the other ones. If you look at the chart here, you can easily see that's not the case. When you're on side A, you can treat all these I am statements the same. You don't have to know if they're literal or figurative. As already mentioned, for this video, we're just going to assume that they're all figurative and not at all literal, and that still leaves us with a bunch of I am statements which explain these other statements which were made about these different terms. With the I am statements, we can learn that people enter by Jesus. Jesus will lay down his life. People should abide in Jesus. People can eat Jesus. With side A, you can have consistency with all these I am statements. So what Evan has here is a misunderstanding of side A. In fact, all of these guys on side B seem to misunderstand what side A is saying. Notice how they're talking about oak doors and pine doors and doorknobs and hinges and strawberry vines and grapevines and carpenters and photons and the sun. That's because these guys on side B think that the people on side A hear I am the bread and just based on that alone say, okay, I guess Jesus is a physical piece of bread. That's not at all what side A is doing. But that's what these guys on side B are assuming that side A is doing, which is why they're talking about all this other stuff. Because if anyone actually was doing this, then it would make sense to say, well, if you think I am the bread means he's a physical piece of bread, then shouldn't you think I am the door means he's a physical door? And the same for the good shepherd and the vine and the light. So that's where this talk of oak, pine, strawberry, grape, knobs, hinges, photon, sun, and carpenters is coming in. But when you actually look at this chart and you understand what side A is saying, then all of this talk is completely irrelevant. We don't need to figure out if he's an oak door or a pine door because nothing in the Bible says that Jesus took a physical door and said, "This is my body." We don't need to explain that he was a carpenter and not a shepherd because nothing in the Bible says that Jesus took a physical shepherd and said, "Hey, this is my body." We don't need to talk about strawberry vines and grapevines because, again, we have no record in the Bible of Jesus taking a physical vine and saying, "This is my body." And the same goes for the photons in the sun, because Jesus never took the sun and said, "Hey guys, check this out. Okay, look at that. Yeah, this is my body, okay? Now you don't have to walk in darkness anymore, and oh no, you're all dead." Probably because this is a flaming hot ball of plasma. That's my bad. All right, there's a reason my dad put this 93 million miles away. Okay. Who needs some aloe? So yeah, that's why we don't have to talk about any of these physical things. On the contrary, the reason we should be talking about physical bread in this conversation is because Jesus took physical bread, blessed it, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." So yeah, if you want this chart to print out and use it in your conversations with side B, it is available for free at htbchristian.com. But yeah, when side B makes these arguments, it just shows that they're not paying attention to what side A is actually saying. Side A can treat all the I am statements in the exact same way. And when side A does that, they can take these statements, remove these words, and get these teachings, which are the teachings that Jesus himself taught. So the reason side A believes we have to feed on Jesus is because Jesus talked about feeding on him. And then to top it all off, he took bread, blessed it, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And speaking of this is my body. All right, so again, that was just a segment from a longer video. If you enjoyed this segment, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell and all. And again, if you want to watch the full video where this segment came from, you can click the link in the description, or actually the link should be appearing in the video right now. This is How to Be Christian. You all have a great day.